Well, first of all, welcome everybody to episode 4 of Noahgenda. Today I have a very special guest. All my guests so far have been special, including the person behind the camera, Justin, and Taylor and Trevor. But if I'm honest, this is my most special guest so far. He is quarterback at the University of Southern California at USC, and my nephew, Miller Moss. Miller, thank you for making the time. I know how many demands there are of you and your time right now, so thank you.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me on.
No, it's my pleasure. All right, so first things first, let's get started. A good place to start as any is probably right at the beginning. Um, you know, Obviously you were the first niece or nephew in our entire family, like in our siblings.
Was that in
And
the beginning?
yep, that's the very beginning. And back then, when Lindsay and I were living in LA, as a result, there was a ton of time for us. We didn't have any kids at the time to go see, I guess, the genesis of Miller Moss, the quarterback and athlete. So at a young age, like most kids, you played a ton of sports, right? Soccer, baseball, basketball, football, and played basketball pretty seriously for a while along with football. I remember games in the Highlands, flag football with Coach Todd. Shout out Coach Todd if he sees this.
Shout out Coach Todd.
Shout out Coach Todd. And do I remember correctly that your dad was banned from coaching at some point in that league?
He was banned from coaching. That was when I started with Todd when I was 7. I think I started playing when I was 5. So I think we played 1 or 2 years, and then probably I think halfway through the second year we got the you can finish the season, but the coach you can finish the season, but please don't come back.
So that was early. It was but the interesting thing was, and then also with basketball, people probably don't know, but you played pretty competitively at an early age. And also at an early age, you kind of left the neighborhood we grew up in and started looking for better competition. Because I think it was, probably you started to really outclass some of the kids you were playing in the community with early. But there's like an interview of you winning an MVP at an AAU basketball tournament when you were, I don't know, 10, something like that.
Yeah, definitely. To this day, I think that was one of the best things my parents ever did for me, taking me out of, like you said, the area we grew up in, the Palisades, and exposing me to more of not only the world but also athletic talent. I think growing up in the Palisades, obviously there's a lot of great things to offer, but it's not the richest it's not the richest pool of athletic talent. And I think taking me out of there at a young age forced me to cultivate skill as opposed to just pure athleticism, right? So
Yeah.
in the long run, that's what you're going to have to rely on to win, unless you are one of one talented human beings like Randy Mosses of the world, which unfortunately I'm not related to. So
Even though he said he's your cousin on ESPN. Yeah.
I know we have very strong resemblance, but we aren't not related. So um,
Now, yeah.
like exposed me to a completely different part of the world, but also taught me at a young age that I was going to have to really hone in and perfect my skill at certain in basketball and football if I was going to be successful.
Do you remember making the decision to say, okay, like I feel like I'm done playing basketball and I'm going to focus solely on football, and kind of what made that decision? How did you make that decision?
Yeah, I think it was difficult. Actually, Steve Clarkson kind of played a somewhat of a role in that.
Mhm.
Um, and I think also the decision to go to St. Matthews kind of played a role in that. I think once I got to 8th grade, I wasn't as serious about it just because it looked like there was a clear path, or at least a chance to have a clear path to go. Obviously, you never know what's going to happen, but to go pretty far with the football thing. And in order to be a Division One athlete as a basketball player, you have to be 6'5" at least and jump 40 inches, which is
Yeah.
just not the case. But I think there was there was absolute overlap. It wasn't just like, oh, I don't think I can go pro in this. I'm not going to play it, because if I truly loved basketball more than I love football, I would have run with I would have run with basketball. And I truly love football, specifically the quarterback position. I think that transition happened like kind of around eighth grade for me.
Yeah, I remember that time. I remember having the discussion with your mom, and just talking about what it looked like. Because I think that, to your point, at that age, like that eighth grade, ninth grade year, you start thinking there, you start getting a little heat, right? Like there's more attention on football players at that age, especially at the quarterback position, right? So you went to St. Matthew's for eighth grade, and then went to Loyola as a freshman. And as a freshman at Loyola, you were the first freshman to start in some insane amount of time, right? They hadn't had a freshman starter in like forever.
Yeah, I think it was like since the school was founded in like 1924 or something. It was a long time.
Yeah, it was a long time. And for people who are listening, maybe don't know, Loyola is an all boys school in downtown Los Angeles. Has been, you know, has been there forever. Has produced a ton of great athletes. And I remember as a freshman, you starting, and that was like part of the story was they, yeah, to your point, they may have had no freshmen start ever at quarterback. And you had, I'd say a good year. And then for your sophomore year, though, had an opportunity to go and play at another school with some coaches that, people of my generation, us old folks, remember in college and pros, a couple of the Clausen brothers. Tell me about how kind of that transpired.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, I think that that first year at Loyola definitely taught me a lot and prepared me for the rest of my high school career. I think having adversity, especially early on, although it's probably the most difficult in that age range, like when you're first starting high school football, when you're first starting college football, when you're first starting whatever it is, like I don't know, calculus, like it's
Yeah.
it's the most difficult at that point, but it also prepares you the best going on the line for when it becomes easier. So I think I learned a lot that first year, and then I just remember my decision in making that decision. Rick and Casey Clausen just gave me basically a list, and it was like Jimmy Clausen, Notre Dame, Brandon Dawkins, Arizona, Tristan Gebbia, Nebraska, and it was all the guys that they had put or that they had sent where I wanted to go in the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years. And I was like, I remember getting in the car with my mom and just being like, this is too good of an opportunity for me to pass up. So playing for guys that had done what I wanted to go do, and then also sent guys to do what I wanted to go do and understood what that looked like, not only at a college level, but a high school level, um, I thought was really, really valuable as a young high school kid. And I'm obviously very glad I made that decision.
Yeah. What was the competition level like that first season at Alamany?
In terms of our team or in terms of who we played against?
Teams of who you were playing against.
Our out of league was probably easier than it was at Loyola, but it's the same league. So it's the Mission League, which
Yeah.
is probably the number 2 league in Southern California. Number 1 being the Trinity League with Mater Dei and Bosco, and then number 2 being the Mission League, which is at that time, I think it's moved around a little bit, but at that time it was Alamany, Bishop Amat, um, Chaminade, Gardena Serra, where Adori and Marquis Lee and all those dudes went. And then Loyola, and I believe Crespi was still in that year. They obviously ended up moving down. But out of league wasn't all that difficult. We did play that Oaks Christian team with Kayvon Thibodeau
Yeah.
and the Calvert brothers and Zach Charbonnet. Obviously, Zach and KT are in the league now, so that's kind of cool to see. Um, that game did not go very well for us. We were a very young team. But it was definitely a learning experience that we got him back the next year, just as
Yeah.
bad. So that was definitely a good feeling. But
I remember watching that game, and yeah, I think that was Zach Charbonnet's senior year.
yes,
And
at that point, that was the best high school football player I'd ever seen.
he physically looked like an adult amongst kids at that time. Like I remember watching it because it was on some sort of prep broadcast, and you could tell dudes did not want to stand in front of him. Like when he got the ball in his hands, people were just like, seemed like the equivalent of somebody getting hit by a car.
Yeah, I think he had multiple runs that got put on CBS Sports against.
Yeah. But to your point, the next year, you guys came back and I think really, really laid it on them. So, you got some revenge.
Yeah, we put them for homecoming and we flipped the script on them, which was nice. But
It was awesome. So sophomore year, you play, have I would say pretty good success. And is that sophomore year? Do you feel like when you started to get a lot of heat recruiting wise?
it was really that off season following my sophomore year. So
Yeah,
going into that year, I gotten a couple of scholarship offers, smaller offers. I think I had San Jose State and Yale going into my sophomore season. So in the in the off season following my freshman year, and then in the subsequent off season following my sophomore year, um, I want to say I got LSU like right when January hit, and then once you kind of land a big one, it kind of snowballs.
yeah.
So I got LSU, Auburn, Michigan, and then from there it kind of just was a little bit of a runaway train.
Very exciting time though. I mean, what is that feeling like, right? At this point, you know, before your junior year, you're rolling in and you spent all this time as a kid and a young man preparing for this, right? And honestly, like when you look at it, you know, a very slim chance of, even high school athletes getting Division 1 scholarship offers. And here you are, you got a ton of offers. How does that feel?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I ever looked at it as like, oh, there's not a high likelihood that I end up a whatever star recruit with
Yeah,
20 plus scholarship offers. I don't think I ever looked at it like that. I looked at it like this is what it looks like with kids who are able to achieve that, and what do I need to do to get there? Um, I think somewhat like the nature of sports is once you accomplish a certain thing that you've tried to attain for a very long time, it becomes about the next thing. So it's like, okay, I've got a bunch of scholarships, but I'm not the number one quarterback in California yet. So how do I then go get that? And it's difficult, especially in the world of sports, I think specifically football, to kind of stop and enjoy things that you accomplish because it's so much about the next thing and what like the last thing you did and then the next thing you're about to do. But I mean, obviously it was really gratifying to see years and years of hard work pay off. And I think the coolest part about that was the relationships I was able to build throughout the process and travel the country with my family and see places I quite frankly never would have gone to otherwise. So that was a really cool part about the process.
that's awesome. So you're rolling the junior year, um, and I feel like your feet are under you. And then that junior year was a fantastic year, right? So tell us a little bit about that. I think you had a great year. I think a kid that's on your USC team now was with you. Tell us a little bit about the junior year.
So we had a really young team sophomore year. So we returned pretty much our entire team coming back that junior year. And we had a feeling we were going to be really, really good. We had a great year. I think we lost one or two games by maybe a total of 6 points, like very winnable games. Lost in the CIF semifinals to the team that won state, but in a good game. That I mean, they won, so they deserve their credit. But I think given different circumstances, might have gone otherwise. But really successful year. I think the team came together. The guys really matured. Like you said, Jalen came a long way physically. I think he's really young. He could be in the grade below. So that physical maturation that he went through from sophomore to junior year obviously really helped him in terms of recruiting. I mean, every school ended up offering him, and then helped us in terms of what he was able to do for our football team. So that was a really really fun year. Probably my most fun year of high school football. It was.
Yeah. Well, and I remember that game you're referring to. It was Corona Del Mar, right? I don't think they lost a game that year when they won that division, right?
No, they didn't. I mean,
And I think you were sick in that semifinal game.
yeah, I was. I mean, like, I don't want to make excuses. They won, but
Right.
there were some debilitating circumstances for us, but we won't get into it. They
We
won,
won't get
and
into that. There you go. So,
they deserve credit for what they did. So
so you finish your junior year, and in the off season between your junior and your senior year, you make the decision to enroll at Mater Dei. And for people who don't know high school football, Mater Dei is a perennial powerhouse, like very frequently ranked as the best team in the country, top 5 team in the country, almost every single year. you had this great team at Alemany, decided to go to Modern Day, and I remember chatting with you about it. And it was, if you wanted to be the best, you felt like you had to play the best. And so going to Modern Day for your senior year was going to give you that opportunity. And you enrolled, and we got some, I remember some Instagram video on Modern Day stuff of you in the red. And then what happened?
Yeah. I mean, I think my view of all this thing is pretty skewed, just in that I never
Yeah.
actually played. But um, then obviously we were dealing with COVID. I went to school my probably I want to say the first week in March of my junior year. I went to high school and I never went back to high school. So
Yeah.
um, obviously in California we didn't end up playing a season. I thought about moving out to Phoenix a little bit.
Yep.
They stay with the cousins and play a season, but at that point I'd kind of already dealt with the media circus of the modern day move and just wanted to train and focus on getting ready for SC. So I think it was really kind of what you said, and that was my thought process at the time. And one of the more difficult decisions I made at that age, I would say, like obviously picking a school, and then that was pretty difficult because I felt a really strong allegiance to Alemany, to the Clausens, and to my teammates there. So um, that was tough. And at the end of the day, like I felt like I was doing what was best for me. Obviously, my perspective on it is somewhat skewed now because I didn't get to play. So I
Yeah.
think had I played, I'd be much more supportive of the decision I made in hindsight. But you know, things shake out how they shake out, and um, they did not ever play a snap for Mater Day, and then ended up going on the SC, which was obviously something I was very happy and excited about. So
Yeah. And I know that was hard. That's a hard time, I think, for anybody who was in school, period. Uh, Brutal that it takes away your senior year. Hard on any kid who was missing school. But I remember you came out to Phoenix. I think it was around my birthday, and Pinnacle was practicing or had some off-season practice or something. But in Arizona, they were going to play. Yeah. And I remember you just looking over and you said, "Oh man, these kids don't realize how lucky they are because they could play." And I think it goes to like how much that meant to you. That here you were going in your senior season. You kind of, at that point in time, knew what the next step was, right? But still were just devastated that you weren't going to get a chance to play with those, with guys in your senior year of high school.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think so much work and so much time and effort is put into a certain thing, and like I put pads on every single fall since I was 9. So like
Yeah,
I this was the first time in, I mean, a decade that, or a little less than a decade, but that I wasn't playing football in the fall. So it was frustrating, and I think that frustration was exacerbated by the fact that buddies of mine in Texas and Florida were playing.
yeah,
So obviously a lot of anger and frustration, and then obviously like Arizona got to play. I don't know whether or not it was mishandled by the powers that be. It's a different discussion, but
sure.
I don't think we will get into. But
Yeah,
um, it was difficult, and I think there was a lot of frustration about it. And I never in a million years thought walking off that field my junior year against Corona Del Mar that would be the last high school football game I ever played. Never in a million. That never even crossed my mind.
no, I can't
Um,
imagine it would have.
so it was frustrating. Absolutely, it was difficult. I feel like that was definitely like a piece that I was missing that I never really got to experience, which is unfortunate. But
Yeah, yep. But you made the best of it, I think, right? You got ready. You enrolled early at SC. Coming off, I would say the disappointment of not being able to play your senior year. But, from the outside, it certainly seemed like going in then to SC, it was going to be a challenge because you came in. There was somebody else committed who had left, but you were coming in again, under or behind a guy, I guess, that would had some Heisman hype coming in, right? In Keaton, had a really good season the year before. So you came in knowing, okay, you were going to compete with that. And then to your point about other kids getting the opportunity to play, another quarterback who's at Ole Miss now who came in, had the chance to play his senior year, ended up winning Gatorade Player of the Year, and now you were going to come in off a year where you hadn't played and have to compete. I don't want to talk too much about that just because it's in the past, but recently you've been a little more open about talking kind of how you felt that year went, and that perhaps you felt like you know you, you weren't told the entire truth, or maybe it wasn't handled fairly looking back on it, and that was a really really tough time for you.
Yeah, I mean, fairly, unfairly, like I'm not gonna necessarily like comment on that part. I think like when I in going into SC, like I held that place or hold that place on such a high pedestal,
Yeah,
and I'd never been in a college program before, so I didn't know any better. I didn't know what another program could look like. Obviously, I'd taken recruiting visits, but like you don't necessarily know what's what at that point, right?
yeah,
I mean, you're showing what they want you to see, for lack of a better.
yeah. They're selling you on it.
No, absolutely they are, and they're good. They're good salesmen. I think I was extremely underwhelmed by the professionalism in a place that I had held in that I'd put on such a pedestal my entire life, and that
Yeah,
was really disappointing and really difficult. Just the people that were running the program at that time, from the top all the way through our offensive staff. Um, I think Kerry Colbert was on that offensive staff, and that was someone that had played here and really understood what it meant to play at USC and the tradition that came with that and the responsibility that came with that. But aside from him on that offensive staff, like there was very little respect for the place. There was very little respect for the area. Um, and it was frustrating. It was difficult to see. And I mean, there's a reason all those people are gone and I'm still here. So
yeah,
uh, I'll leave it at that. But definitely a frustrating year, but also a year like I learned a ton again. So
yep,
uh, I'm grateful for the experience. Now I'm grateful for the experience. I think in a
yeah.
lot of ways it made me the player and the human being that I am today. But uh, definitely hurt for the school and the university that that's the way it was represented for a few years there.
Yep. And going back, because you touched on it, you had a big decision to make before you decided to go to USC, right? I mean, as we talked about earlier, you got every offer pretty much that you could want, right? And I remember, you got down to the top four, um, it's UCLA, LSU, Alabama, and SC at the time. And I knew that at that time, even that like your heart was at SC because you'd grown up an SC fan. And like, the emotional connection was there. But we didn't know when. And you probably are aware of this. So you hadn't committed yet. And it was like a Saturday morning. We get this package delivered at our house. And we had no idea what it is. We open it up. And it's like a kid's t-shirt and hat from USC that your mom had sent for Clay and Katie. And it was just such a I don't know, it was just such an amazing moment. It all for me it became real. Like, oh shoot, like he's going there. This is his spot. From that moment on, we were, world's biggest USC fans for you, and I remember just being so happy for you and feeling like, to your point, like you made the decision of the place where your heart was. And I think going off of that, I think you're right. I think that difficulty and those challenges is what makes people, right? Most successful people can point to a handful of moments in their lives where they faced real adversity, and real adversity that made them, probably second guess their decisions, whether it's an entrepreneur starting a business, somebody choosing what college they're going to, an athlete deciding where to sign, right? There are some of these moments that every successful person goes through that tests them. And I think to your point, that freshman year that I know was difficult really helped you become kind of the person you are. And you add the other element, right? Because there's a big change in college athletics from when you were recruited to when, you know, it became transfer portal opened and then NIL opportunities opened, right? And those were both things that did not exist during your recruiting. How has that stuff changed the landscape for you, the transfer portal and these NIL opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot made about NIL and the portal, obviously. I think at a very basic level, NIL is good, right?
Yeah,
Like we're making X amount of $1 billion for these conferences, for these TV networks. We're bankrolling the rest of the athletic department. So
yeah,
like 95% of college athletic sports operates in the red. They lose money every year.
yeah,
And athletic programs rely on their football program and in some cases their basketball program if you are at a Duke or a North Carolina or now UConn, I guess, is the team in basketball. So they rely on those teams to subsidize the rest of their athletic program. So I think at a very basic level, NIL is good.
yeah.
Um, because players deserve to be compensated for their work, especially with the things they
Agreed.
have to juggle with
Yep.
school and being a professional athlete or
Yeah,
professional athlete adjacent. So yes, NIL is better than no NIL.
yeah,
How it's been how it's been used and manipulated to lure kids away from certain schools, to convince kids into making decisions that they might not otherwise make, that's obviously a different discussion. And the fact that there needs to be some conformity, there needs to be some structure. You can't just have kids going to the highest bidder. Like that's not good for the sport.
yeah,
But kids being compensated based on what they bring to the program, absolutely,
yeah,
completely. I think there will be some structure. I don't know what form that will take, but um, I would rather have what we have now than what we had before, where kids don't get compensated whatsoever. And I think that like when you start something, like you don't know exactly what shape it's going to take, and I think we've kind of seen that now, and now we can move forward in terms of how to make it more equitable across um, universities.
yeah. Well, I think you guys are part of the like the pilot program. You're like a little bit of the
Yeah,
guinea pigs of the
yeah,
NIL
yeah, for
universe.
sure. Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, like this. There we go. This is an NIL opportunity you had.
Those things are good.
They are good, and they're very good. Are,
Yeah, in terms of the portal, obviously, like there are situations where it's extremely advantageous for a kid who is not going to have an opportunity to play at maybe a bigger school to go play at a smaller school at a lower division and have that opportunity to get on the field and play football. Because at the end of the day, like that's like we love to play football. Like getting on the field
yeah,
is so much fun. It's such a great opportunity. It can change people's lives. You can build relationships. Like you create memories that you'll always and forever remember and cherish. When you have a kid, I think they just passed this past offseason that you can transfer whenever, however many times. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. Just in that like you have a kid come in for a spring from a school and within 4 weeks he's like, yeah, you know what? They didn't pay me on time. I think I'm gonna go to a different school now. And it's just
yeah,
like what are we doing? Like it there's similar to NIL, but I think even more so because like teams really teams really get hurt by the transfer portal because like it's hard to build continuity in a locker room when you feel like you're really good your players and especially your really good players are constantly being recruited by other places. So you have to almost re-recruit your team every single offseason. And I think that's really difficult. But yeah, I mean the transfer portal is so I mean when you look at it, TCU and Washington were in the national championship the last 2 years. Are those I mean obviously Washington had some really special players, special talents this past year, but um you can't tell me those are the two most talented teams, but they were able to come together in a special way and accomplish special things when other teams like an Ohio State or Alabama or shoot LSU who had more talent were hurt by these things that we haven't had to navigate before. So obviously it's
yeah.
changed the sport a lot and curious to see how it unfolds in the future.
I agree. I think the athletes deserve to get paid. I think you open up that box and then you figure out, unfortunately, kind of after the box is open, where the holes are and where the gaps are and what type of guardrails you need. But knowing what your schedule looks like, knowing how much you do for the school as a whole, there's no doubt that in my mind that college athletes should deserve and should be paid. But yeah, I think to your point, we probably do see some sort of structure around what it looks like going forward. Right now that it's out there, now that we know how it's kind of how the whole situation's permutated. Right, like, oh, this is how this ended up working out. We didn't foresee this type of thing happening. Okay, this is going to be the guardrail that we set up to make sure that kids are taken care of too, right? That kids are having the opportunity to make the right decisions for themselves long term and maybe not just short term. But we'll see what that looks like. I think it's anybody's guess now. I think there will be changes. Everybody knows that. It'll just be what those changes look like.
No,
All right, so
absolutely.
let's. I want to shift gears a little bit. Past 2 years, you played behind a guy who's got a very big day today. We're filming this on Thursday. So you
Yes.
played behind a guy, a very, very big day probably for Caleb Williams. He obviously finished his year last year, and then before the bowl game, decided to focus on getting ready for the draft. I want to get to the draft a little bit later, but before we get there, I want to talk about what it was like in the weeks leading up to the bowl game, to the Holiday Bowl. It's funny. The first podcast that I filmed with Justin here
Yeah.
was a couple weeks before the Holiday Bowl,
Okay.
and
Yeah, I
on
remember.
you remember seeing that on the podcast? He's talking to me. Oh, like, what are you into? What are you like outside of work? And said, oh, well, we're getting ready to go support my nephew. It's got the Holiday Bowl coming up. And when I looked back on that, just talking about it, like the smile on my face was so big because, I've seen now for 20 something years, like how hard you've worked and how hard you continue to work and do all the right things. And to finally have the opportunity, and you never know how it's going to go, right? It's the thing about athletics. It's like you can prepare and prepare and prepare and prepare, but you get on the field and there's so many variables. You do everything you can to control those things, but at the end of the day, you don't know what's going to happen.
No, absolutely.
But what was it like preparing those? I think was it 6 weeks between the end of the season and the bowl game?
Yeah,
Something
so
like that?
it was kind of weird because our last game was UCLA, and then there was still one more week of the season in which we obviously didn't play, and then there was championship week, and then we had the bowl prep. So it was kind of weird in how the schedule was staggered, but I think around 6 weeks is correct.
And what did that time look like when you kind of knew, hey, I'm going to be the guy, like this is an opportunity for me to get out there? What did those weeks look like? What did the fan not get to see that was happening behind the scenes for those 6 weeks as you guys got ready?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like the entire year, I had been saying to myself, like, look, like you need to get ready to take this thing over because regardless of how the season or played out, like you're gonna have to be ready to take this team over come January. And
Yeah.
that opportunity obviously came sooner than I had expected, which I'm very grateful for. Um, but I think it was something that I'd been preparing for a very long time, kind of as you touched on earlier. In terms of those 6 weeks, I mean, there were things I'd wanted to do in that role that I hadn't necessarily done because obviously I was the two behind Caleb. So it was really interesting for me to see like how certain leadership approaches unfolded, how guys responded to certain things. It was a really interesting time, and then obviously like I dove into game playing, getting ready for Louisville to the fullest extent. Like you said, you never know how it's gonna unfold, but I didn't want to leave any stone unturned. They were a good defense. I think they're a top 15, top 20 defense in college football. So whenever you're playing a squad like that, that's obviously had success. They're a 10-win team that went to a conference championship game, and I mean played Florida State's guys like pretty tough. So knew that they were a good team, that they were a solid opponent. So really wanted to be prepared, and that's really what those 6 weeks looked like. Just like pouring into my team as much as I could, really try to bring the guys together, both offensively and as a team as a whole, and then just preparing as much as I could.
Yeah, and I think to your point, yeah, they were like a top 20 defense. And I don't think had many opt outs. Like,
Oh, no,
you
they
know,
did. We had thought they had a really good DB number three, who we weren't sure about, but he ended up playing.
yeah. And if people didn't watch the Holiday Bowl, it went about as well as you could have hoped for. I
Yeah, no,
mean,
it went well. I mean, I think our team came together really, really well, and you saw kind of what it looked like when a group of guys who are all pretty talented come together for a common goal. So I was happy for our squad, and obviously came out with the W, which is the most important thing at the end of the day. So
yeah, from a team perspective, as a fan who had watched, every SC game that year, that SC team in the Holiday Bowl, it looked different. Now, I'm probably biased because I love you so much, but the team looked different. The defense looked different. The offense looked different. It really looked like the team had come together, and I think you and I had actually chatted in that time between. I think you and I talk about I don't know, once a week or so. But you and I had chatted about how that bowl game getting your guys ready to view that bowl game not as the last game of 23, but as the first game of 24,
yeah,
right? Like, hey, this isn't the last game of this season. This is the first game of next season. And having that level of focus and preparation, obviously shown, right? In editing, Justin can probably throw the stats up here, but, Holiday Bowl record, USC Bowl record, touchdowns, a ton of yards. Most importantly, the win, and I think a team that really, really came together. We were in the stands, and obviously, going into the game, very excited for the opportunity. Your second favorite uncle and I were sitting next to each other, Uncle Jacob, my brother. So we were sitting next to each other, and it was an emotional experience.
yeah,
Like there I got teary because I knew how hard you had worked and how long you had prepared, and seeing the result as such a positive one was so amazing. Our whole family was there, as you know. You and I had sat down the night before, and your mother, as you know, gets very nervous before all of your games.
absolutely.
And she was very nervous. But you, that night, the night before, were just calm. Like, when people asked me, like, oh, how was he? I was like, he just seemed prepared. Like, he just seemed calm. He seemed like he was calm. He was prepared. The next day when we saw you walk in off the bus, it was a different level. It was like, I was like, oh, he was focused. Like, it was 100% focus on the issue at hand. It was definitely like a palpable difference between that night and the next day. But to have that game, have that level of success, not only personally, but to your point, for the team to end the season on that note, or to start the new season on that note,
Yeah,
I think was huge.
yeah.
And, I guess we'll know in a couple months, but, what a wonderful experience it was, I'm sure, for the entire team, for you, and for the fans, and for your biggest fan club, an amazing experience too.
No, absolutely. I mean, like you said, like it meant the world to have my family there. You guys obviously made the trip from A to Z, which was awesome. It was great to see all the kiddos before the game and everything. I was probably a little locked, maybe not the most loving cousin at that point, but I was just getting ready to play. But it's awesome to kind of share those moments with your family and the people that supported you the entire way. So definitely a special moment. But I mean, I think one thing that's important to keep in mind, especially when it comes to sports and especially playing the position, like you work so hard to have a certain like one moment of success, like that doesn't guarantee the next one.
No.
So definitely still a lot of work to do that we have to do both personally and then on the team as well going into LSU and then the season this year. So I'm excited about that.
What does that look like, right? Is channeling the success you had in the Holiday Bowl, but knowing that, to your point you said earlier, in sports, it's always about the next game, right? You celebrate that victory for the night, maybe the next day, but it's about getting ready then for the next one, right? The next game, the next opponent, the next challenge. How do you balance, you know, embracing the success you had, but continuing to maintain that level of preparation for the next opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that did is just give me like, I mean, that's just credibility in terms of leadership position. You know what I mean? Aside from that, like it means very little now, like
Yeah,
uh that's, I mean, for lack of a better term, it's in the past, and I think it's time to go put a full season together. It was a really, really nice moment for both myself and the team. But I mean, obviously we're not gonna rest on a Holiday Bowl victory.
yeah.
It's time to go get some more stuff. So we're excited about the
What
opportunity, I think.
What are your goals or expectations for the coming season?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I have more private, personal goals, but I think that
Sure.
I really just want our team to come together like the team I know we should be. I think we need to take it 1 week at a time. That's really, really my focus, is take it 1 week at a time. Don't look ahead to certain matchups or certain games or anything like that. And just continue to make the next right decision. I think get caught up in being the SC quarterback or playing against Michigan or playing against LSU, playing in the NFL stadium, whatever it may be. But just continue to make the next right decision, and it'll be all right. Find the next completion, and
I love it.
all right.
On in that vein, kind of the next right decision and the Holiday Bowl. You've got a couple guys. We mentioned Caleb. It's got a big night tonight. But over the next couple of days, you got a couple guys who hopefully have some big days, right? So you got Brendan Rice. You got Taj. Taj, who played in that game and had a great game in the Holiday Bowl, had a great season overall, over 1,000 yards. You got Marshawn Lloyd. I'm sure I'm forgetting some of these guys. I think Austin too,
Right?
right?
Yeah, Austin, Kalen.
Yeah,
Yeah, Kalen.
Kalen. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of guys that we're obviously super excited about. You talk about um, Taj and B Rice, just B Rice seeing like when he came in, the obviously as a transfer from Colorado, he came in and just seeing the growth that he made in those 2 years was really cool. Obviously a guy that has a lot of expectation that
Yeah.
weighs on him, and that can't be easy to deal with. So seeing him kind of work through that in a positive way and put himself in a position to do what he's always dreamed of doing was really cool. He obviously had a great year. I think led the team in touchdowns on the off or in terms of in receiving touchdowns on the offensive side, which was great. Just really proud of him and the growth that he made over the last 2 years. Taj, I mean, I can't say enough about that guy. He obviously played in the bowl game. I think went for over 102 touchdowns, which doesn't surprise anyone or any of us that know Taj. But I think teams are pretty enamored with him and his work ethic and his kind of team first disposition. So really excited to see where he goes. And obviously, there's some other guys. Kalen I came in with was kind of a freak athlete since day one, true
Yeah.
center back there. So excited for all those guys. Obviously, life changing days and moments coming up. So really happy for all of them.
It's going to be exciting. I think we're all excited to see kind of how everything, unfolds. I've got some questions from some of your biggest fans. Okay. So one, Katie Kovner, her question when I asked her, what questions do you have for Miller for the podcast? Her question was, who is your favorite cousin? I told her I think the answer is going to be both of them, but she wanted to know who your favorite cousin is.
Well, Katie is my favorite girl cousin, and Clay is my favorite boy cousin.
There you go. Perfect. And then you kind of addressed it. Clay had a question that I already asked, which was what were your goals for the year, which I think you touched on. And then Lindsay asked, she said, if it didn't end up being football, if you think there's another sport you would have pursued passionately, or if there was something else that really, gets your motor going, if it wasn't football, what would it be?
Right. Yeah, no, it's a great question, Lance. I mean, obviously we touch on basketball. I don't know how far I would have gone in basketball. But it was something I always loved and gravitated towards. So if it was another sport, it would have been basketball, absolutely. Um, in terms of outside of the sports realm, I mean, I was pre-law undergrad with the finance minor, and I think either of those directions I would have loved to go in, whether it was the finance, consulting, investment banking to private equity route. I think I would have loved that, or if it was the law track where she continued on with that and ended up going to law school, whether that was at SC or somewhere else. I think um, I would have found a lot of gratification in doing that too. I think I was very drawn to both those subjects, and um, obviously happy that I'm at a place that offers um, such a wide range in terms of opportunity and education. So I think either of those routes would have loved to go, but obviously happy with the one I'm taking as of now. You never know though.
You never know. Any new partnerships we should be on the lookout for? Any new NIL stuff? You kind of mentioned some of the clothing and the branding stuff, which is exciting. Anything else we should be on the lookout for?
Yeah, so we're doing a little apparel thing that should be coming out shortly, but not
Nice.
going to get too much more into that.
All
But
right.
a couple partnerships, doing something with the self-driving cars, Waymo, which I think should be cool. Um,
Nice.
and then gonna do a kids camp with Zachariah this summer, which should be awesome. I think those are the two that I'm allowed to talk about right now,
All right. Perfect.
but definitely looking forward to those two. So it should be cool.
That's awesome. We got Waymo out here. So,
There we go.
yeah, I haven't been in one yet. They're not as far north as we are. Justin, have you been on a Waymo? They're all over this area, like a lot around Tempe, South Scottsdale. So, um, all right, last kind of question. If you and I are chatting again next year at this time, and obviously knowing, there's some stuff you've got internally and internal goals and whatnot. But if we're chatting next year at this time, what are some things you hope would have happened where you said, hey, I'm really proud of XYZ? Over this next year, if you can, what are some things that, you'd like to reflect back on that would make you real proud of the year that you had?
Shoot, maybe I won't be in my college apartment right now, but
Yeah.
but I think just in hindsight, just how I mean, it's not easy, but I think it's a lot easier to handle the positive than the negative. So I think if I, in hindsight, say, look, I was able to handle the ups and downs and some of the difficulties that come with playing this position at this school in a positive way, and didn't let that affect me and really my sense of myself as a player and as a human being, and I was able to really work through that and play with resilience, then I think that would be the biggest thing for me that I would be proud of in hindsight.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Um, well, thank you for making the time in closing. Thank you. I know how much, what kind of demands there are on your time as a student, as an athlete, having all this other stuff that, you're obligated to and that you get to do, right? Not just obligation. You get to do all these things that I know you're so passionate about and love. But, to wrap up, I love you, and I can't wait to see you in a few weeks. I guess maybe like a month for your sister's graduation. Yep. Your very, very accomplished sister as well. I'm excited to see you then. But thank you. Is there anything else you want to leave us with?
No, love you so much. Tell the family I send my love, and thank you so much for having me.
All right, Mill. Well, thank you. Fight on. Excited for the season opener in Vegas against LSU. And have a great off season. And I can't wait to see you on the field.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Noah.
buddy.
All right.
Love you.
Love you.
Bye.